I am a poor old chimney sweeper. I have but one daughter and now I can't keep her. So since she has resolved to marry, go choose you one and do not tarry. All the day.
In 1938, Anne and Frank Warner happened upon an Appalachian dulcimer, the first they had seen. Fascinated, they posted a letter to the builder, Mr. Nathan Hicks, in Beech Mountains, North Carolina, and asked if he could make one for them. In his answer was despair so plain that instantly everything changed for Anne and Frank. Nathan couldn't make their dulcimer, he said, because postage and glue and nails cost me money, and times are so hard, and my wife is sick most of the time, and we have 10 children, and time are so hard I can't get much money. With the Warners, it was always people first, music second. They packed the car full of food and clothes and went to visit. At Boone, North Carolina, they headed straight into the mountains and soon found themselves at Nathan and Rena Hicks's house, with scores of children, neighbors and relations all staring at the strangers from, as they called it, the beyond. Then out came the dulcimers and Frank's guitar, and the music started to flow. A flood of old songs from these new friends.
Hang down here, Tom Dooley, hang down here and cry. Hang down here, Tom Dooley, poor boy, you bound to die.
A son-in-law of Nathan and Rena's was there, a dignified man named Frank Prophet, who sang about a murder that had occurred nearby 70 years before. The song was Tom Dooley. Frank Warner learned it and sang it for years. Alan Lomax put it in his Folk Songs of North America, and then, of all things, the song became a hit. Tom Dooley was the spark that lighted the tinder of the folk music revival. Over the years, Frank Prophet sang the Warners 120 songs, but it was just one, Tom Dooley, that enabled the Warners to bring him to the world beyond his mountains. Frank Prophet began to collect the songs he sang, and later he wrote, "Frank Warner came, and in him I saw an educated person who made me feel like somebody, and I opened my heart to him. I told him of my people, and he and Anne didn't seem to notice that we were poor and didn't know big words. They bragged on our new calf, our little 2-room cabin, and brought store stuff for us to eat. I walked on air for days." It was the Depression. Frank and Anne had full-time jobs and not much money, but what they had they spent collecting. Alan Lomax called it a continuous act of unpaid devotion to American folk song, and a lifelong love affair with the people who remembered the ballads. And lifelong it was. They went back as often as they could for decades, visiting their friends and then the next generation and the next. Their sons, Jeff and Garrett, went along too, and they go still. Lord, to save my soul. What Frank and Anne collected wasn't just songs, it was people. And what a collection. There were the Hickses and their tall, storytelling son Ray, and Buna and Roby Monroe Hicks playing homemade instruments. There was the soulful singer Lee Monroe Presnell. Near Raleigh lived sweet Rebecca King-Jones. And east of her, Sue Thomas, who taught them he's got the whole word in his hand. They met Tink and Eleazar Tillett, who sang songs shipwrecked on the Outer Banks. In Suffolk, Virginia, they met Joe Henry Johnson, preacher and peanut vendor. In the Adirondacks, Yankee John Galusha sang them stunning songs of the deep woods. New Hampshire's Lena Bournefish sang them an amazing 100 songs in 2 weekends. Wherever they travelled, they collected music. If it was an old song, they wanted to hear it. Frank was born in Selma, Alabama, and grew up in Durham, North Carolina. At Duke University, he sang in the choir, he sang in the glee club, sang in a quartet, sang with the guitar, sang with the ukulele. He sang whenever, wherever, and whatever he could. Ann Loker Warner grew up in the Midwest. She attended good, demanding schools and went on to Northwestern University, where she was a fiercely dedicated student until the crash of '29, when she left college behind and went to work in New York City. She was a student of literature, a fine, clear writer, a diarist, and she had a series of jobs she loved: the Council on Foreign Relations, the China Institute, and later Nassau County, New York. When Anne first met Frank Warner, there was nothing to indicate that she would one day write a very great book on traditional song. They were an unbeatable team, the essence of mutually complementary skills. In the early years, Frank would sit with singers, put them at ease, bring out the songs, and remember the tunes. Meanwhile, Anne was writing down words, cataloguing the recordings, keeping the diary, researching, writing album notes, articles, and books. In 1941, Philco developed for them the very first battery-powered portable recording machine, and they gathered every song they could find, 1,000 songs. Frank Warner's life as a YMCA executive was about building bridges and abetting communication, and so was his other life as a singer of songs. He was an ambassador, introducing region to region and bringing the old folk cultures to a modern world ready to subsume it. Frank had a performance style that was different from anyone before or since. Alan Lomax said, "Warner devoted himself to singing like the master ballad singers he met. When Frank was preparing to sing, you would note the delight rising in him. He was remembering the person whole, to play the part for you, so that the original singer was there presented through Frank." It wasn't in Frank Warner to separate the singers from the songs. It was people first, music second. When Frank and Anne retired, they began to write about their lives in music. Frank died in 1978, before the book was published, but Anne persevered. Traditional American folk songs from the Anne and Frank Warner collection is a most remarkable work. It is full of memorable detail. It is autobiography, oral history, songbook and photo album, and like the lives of the Warners, it is a journey to the mountains and shores of another America. Wayland Hand called it the richest single volume to come from the hands of any American folk song scholar. The human warmth radiating from this book has not been surpassed. How could the book have been anything else? This work of the couple from New York who collected not just the songs, but the singers of songs. With the Warners, it was always people first, music second.